Well, it's been announced that Meghan Markle is not attending the coronation of King Charles on May 6th, but Prince Harry is going to be attending. So today I wanted to take a look at the astrology chart of Meghan Markle to get an idea of what kind of planetary energies are at play at the moment, because this sounds like a very difficult decision. I know that anybody that's married or in a long term partnership knows that family events can be one of those emotional, volatile type of events. So we're going to be taking a look at that. If you're new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my readings. If you're interested in a personal private reading, check down below for details, and I would be more than happy to do that for you. Also, if you're interested in healing meditations, make sure you check out my new channel, Thor Spirit Teachings, where you can listen to free meditations to help you modify and enhance your karma. All right, so let's take a look at the astrology chart of Meghan Markle. And quick disclaimer, this astrological reading is for entertainment purposes only. I am just merely speculating as to the energies in Meghan Markle's chart, and this is my personal opinion of what it allegedly means. Okay, so let's take a look. I want you to know, first of all, that in Meghan's case, she's in a K2 Bhukti, and K2 period is from now until June 24th, 2023. So she's only in this K2 Bhukti for about a couple of more months, but it's within the time of when King Charles is about to have his coronation. Now, many of you may have heard in some of my readings previously, K2, which is this symbol right here, it's known as the south node of the moon in Western tropical astrology. But K2 is associated with usually like loss, surrender, apathy, difficulty. Okay. Usually there's some form of loss or detachment that happens during K2 periods. We also have to look at the Lord of K2. So obviously at this moment, just looking at this K2 period, this is not a period of like being overjoyed at all. There's a lot of difficulty surrounding this period. And especially with it being in the seventh house, I just want to make a quick comment before we look at the Lord here. The seventh house is all about partnership and marriage. So whatever's happening right now, we could say that K2 is definitely having a separative influence. So there's a separative influence on the relationship at the moment. It's not necessarily a good influence. This isn't like this is all roses and peaches. Okay. This is a very difficult time for Meghan Markle. The other thing I want to bring up is we look at the Lord of K2 because Rahu and K2 will either act like the planets that they're next to or their planetary lord. So in Meghan's case, there's no planet inside of the seventh house with K2. So we need to look, it's in the sign of Capricorn here. So that means the Lord is Saturn. Okay. Well, when Saturn's the planetary lord of K2, Saturn represents things like great difficulty, heavy karma. It represents uh, like cold, dark places we might find ourselves in, both physically and even emotionally and mentally. So, this is a very difficult place to be in. Anybody that's in a Saturn period can definitely attest that it's a very difficult time emotionally. You feel like you're emotionally constrained. You feel like you're not getting a lot of agreement from the people around you. It's definitely not a good period to be in. The other point I wanted to bring up is you'll notice that Saturn, Lord of K2, is right next to the moon. So this could show a general tendency, and this is a very generalized tendency, not a medical diagnosis, but this is a general tendency towards like pessimistic thinking, even things like just feeling down about things. That can all be indicated with Saturn being near your moon in your chart. There's a difficulty trying to be optimistic about life. I also want to point this other thing out about Saturn here. It's in the sign of Virgo, and anybody that has Saturn in the sign of Virgo, there is a karma with criticism. Okay, so there's a fear, because remember, Saturn represents at its most basic level, it's fear. Okay, so there's a fear of criticism, there's a fear of being in the spotlight, there's a fear of what may people think. So I can tell you there's definitely this fear of, probably, and I'm speculating here, but probably if she were to go visit during the coronation, there's this fear of this extreme public criticism there. Okay. And maybe, and many of you that saw the documentary Harry and Meghan on Netflix may have noticed that what really set off Meghan, according to the documentary, was when she was first encountering these criticisms from the public. So she does not take criticism well. So this is the placement there. We don't take criticism well with Saturn and Virgo. But ironically, this placement is kind of interesting because this actually shows that Meghan herself may actually be an overly critical person. Because what we do is when we're overly criticized as children, we tend to project that outward as adults. So we might become people that are perfectionists. We might be somebody who's really really obsessed with the details of things. So we become very highly critical of other people, but we're projecting our own issues on the people. So that's really what's going on. Now, the other point I wanted to bring up, besides this whole K2 period, which by the way, this can mean separation. Okay. Separation. So there's a feeling of separation. So even if Harry goes to this thing and there's this feeling of just like this forced separation. Okay. I did also want to bring up the fact that I've seen couples, especially when one partner's in K2, either Bhukti or Mahadasha, a lot of times, and I'm not saying this for a fact with Harry and Meghan, but a lot of times there's like some sort of like ultimatum brought up. Okay, I've seen this in a few cases where one partner, usually the partner that's not in a K2 period, will say, look, I'm going to this family event, and even if the person is protesting, the person going through the K2 period, the other partner will say, well, I'm going to this whether you like it or not. And then they'll just go. And that's what K2 is. K2 is like, you can't do anything about it. You're surrendering to it. It's like, oh my gosh, there's these forces greater than myself that are making this happen. So even if she doesn't want him to go, which may be the case, this very much might be the case with K2 going on. But it's almost like she doesn't have a choice. Like it's just being said, I'm going to go. Okay. All right. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I find it quite interesting that King Charles is having his coronation during a Mercury retrograde. If I was his astrologer, I wouldn't personally recommend having the coronation during a Mercury retrograde, but it is what it is. Okay. So the Mercury retrograde starts April 21st and it's going to be till May 14th. Okay. So the coronation is scheduled for May 6th. Okay. What I wanted to bring up in Meghan's chart is Mercury's going to be here in the 10th house, which is all about, public visibility to the public, leadership, career, things like that. But I'm more thinking about how is this affecting Meghan on an emotional level. Okay. And what we can do is we can look at the moon chart over here. And basically the moon chart is just, you make the moon the first house. Okay. And then you make the other houses, so this becomes the first house. Now in the moon chart, because this is how we can see how somebody's going through a period emotionally. Okay. So this K2 period, it is real that she's concerned about the children. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I remember some people saying that she's staying for the kids, the sake of the kids. There may be some truth to that because of K2 being in the 5th house of the moon chart. Okay. So there's a concern about the kids, but I did want to bring this up. The Mercury retrograde is happening in the 8th house of the moon chart. Okay. And 8th house represents things like in-laws, and it also represents emotional upheaval. Okay. So emotional volatility. This is an extremely difficult period of time. So anytime anyone's going through any type of eighth from moon like period, it's like an emotionally volatile period. So for example, and I'm going to get off the chart for a second here. For example, somebody might like be up and down. So, and I'm using this as a speculative, we're speculating on this, but it'd be like maybe one day she's like, okay, I'm okay with Harry going to this coronation. And then the next day, not okay. Because eighth house has that volatility of like you start thinking about things, like maybe you're okay for one moment, you're not okay the next moment. So there's this volatility that's happening with the eighth house. And especially with Mercury being retrograde, remember, Mercury represents like your thoughts, your mentality. And there's a lot of miscommunication. So there might even be a lot of miscommunications during this period between Harry, Meghan, the royal family. And this is just like a time of general confusion. I can tell you with this eighth from moon factor, because we have a solar eclipse happening on the 21st, Jupiter's changing signs in the sign of Aries. This eighth from moon is just like this might be just like a significant emotional moment for Meghan. So this is intense. Okay. And maybe she doesn't necessarily think it's going to be a big deal, but it usually ends up being like maybe when she sees the reports happening on the news, she's watching it, she's going to be a little bit more affected than maybe she thinks. So that's what I got for you on this reading of Meghan Markle's chart. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And of course, let me know what kind of videos you would like to see in the future. I can also take a look at Prince Harry's chart if you are all interested in what's going on from the astrological perspective of Prince Harry's chart as well. So let me know down below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.